Dear students, I Dr. Golab Chandra Nandi from the Department of Economics. I welcome all of you, and I congratulate all of you for your grand success in your HS first year examinations, and I wish your grand success in your final examinations, that is higher secondary final year. Now today we shall start our second unit, that is your microeconomics, that is consumer behavior. So under consumer behavior we shall learn what is utility, what are the different types of utility, and what are the different approaches through which one consumer he can maximize his satisfactions. Now as a consumer, you know, the main objectives of a consumer is to maximize his utility, or to maximize his satisfactions. So now there are different approaches. One is called cardinal utility approach, one is called ordinal utility approach, and in a higher studies we will be having reveal preference approach. So we shall start with our cardinal utility approach. Before going to that, to learn what is exactly your cardinal utility approach is, we should define some terms, that is, we should have some clear idea about the terminology of utility. What is total utility, what is marginal utility, what is consumer equilibrium, and then we shall go to our different approaches through which we can show that the consumer, given his income, he can maximize his satisfactions, or that satisfaction with his given income and given the prices of the commodity is called the consumer's equilibrium point. So before going to that part, so first we define under consumer theory. Under consumer theory, the first term is called utility. The first term is called utility. Now as a consumer, when we go to market and we purchase some commodities through our medium of exchange, we purchase that commodity, and our main objective is to consume, and out of our consumptions we have to derive some satisfaction, some level of satisfaction, so that we can maximize our utility or satisfaction. So that term, that is the utility, that is in layman word it is exactly called our satisfaction. So in layman word you can say the term is called satisfaction. So as usual we say the utility means satisfactions, but in pure technical terms, if you say the term utility in economics, then in technical terms your utility, that is called, it is the one satisfying power of a commodity. Now what is that one satisfying power? Suppose this is a glass of water. Now suppose this is a glass of water, and you are feeling thirsty, and if you consume that glass of water, then after your consumptions, what level of satisfaction that you are deriving, that is this glass of water is having the power, what type of power? That is, it is having the power to satisfy your want. So if you take that glass of water is your commodity, then that commodity, if that commodity is having the power to satisfy human wants, then it is called our utility. So the term utility is technically defined as it is the one satisfying power of a commodity. So suppose you are having rupees 10 at your pocket, that is your income. Suppose your income is rupees 10, and with that rupees 10 you want to purchase one sweet. When you are purchasing that sweet and you consume that sweet, then out of your consumption you are having the satisfaction. you are having the satisfactions, then and that sweet is your commodity, and it is having the power. What type of power? That after your consumptions you are now satisfied. So the sweet is having the power to satisfy your human wants. So utility, in technical terms, it is called the want satisfying power of a commodity. Now utility is having again two types. One is called marginal utility and one is called total utility. So first we define what is our total utility and what is our marginal utility. Now utility, you are having total utility, the concept total utility. What is total utility? That is, it is the sum total of satisfaction satisfactions derived from the consumption of a bundle of commodities. So it is the sum total of satisfactions derived from the consumption of a bundle of commodities. Now suppose you are having the consumption of sweet, and that is your first unit of sweet. That is, at the outset you are consuming the first sweet, then you are taking the second one, then you are taking the third one. Now your satisfactions derived from the consumption of the first unit of sweet. If you derive the utility, suppose utility of the first unit is given by U1, and utility derived from the second unit of sweet, then it is given by suppose U2, and utility derived from the third unit of sweet, then it is given by U3. In that way, if you consume your n number of commodities, n number of sweet, then out of nth unit your utility is given by UN. Now these are the bundle of commodities, that is, you are consuming first unit, second unit, third unit of your sweet. That is first rasagulla, second rasagulla, third rasagulla, and in that way, suppose you are consuming 10 units of rasagulla, and that rasagulla here it is called suppose sweet. Now the total utility, out of our definition, what is the total utility? That is sum total of satisfaction derived from the consumption of a bundle of commodities. So your total utility is equal to utility derived from the first unit of sweet plus utility derived from the second unit of sweet plus utility derived from the third unit of sweet. In that way, if you consume nth unit of sweet, then this is the sum total of your utility. That is, total utility is equal to utility from first unit, utility from second unit, third unit up to nth unit, and if you add up all these utilities, then it is equal to your total utility. So that is your total utility is equal to summation I is equal to 1 to n uy. So here I is equal to 1, 2 up to n. So these are nothing but your number of units of commodity, that is your how many units, that is up to nth unit you are consuming that sweet, and if you add up all this, then that addition is given by that sum total, that is I goes from 1 to n, and that is uy. So uy is nothing but 1, 2, 3 up to n. So if you add up all these utilities derived from the successive units of your sweet or commodity, then if you get the grand total of your utility, then that is your total utility. So your total utility is given by sum total of satisfactions or utility derived from the consumption of a bundle of commodities. So this is your total utility. Now we shall define what is our marginal utility. Marginal utility, that is defined as utility derived from the consumption of additional unit of commodity. So what is your marginal utility? That is utility derived from the consumption of additional unit of commodity. Now suppose your total utility that you derived from the first unit of sweet, that is if you consume the first unit of your rasagulla, here rasagulla is sweet, so if you consume the first unit of rasagulla or sweet, and the utility that you derive from the consumption of the first unit of your rasagulla or sweet, then it is given by TU1. And your utility derived from the second unit, after consumption of the first unit, if you consume the second unit of your rasagulla or sweet, then the utility derived from that consumption of the second unit of your rasagulla or sweet, then it is given by TU, total utility from the second unit of your sweet. So you are now having the second unit, and here the total utility from the first unit. So here marginal utility, it is given by utility derived from the consumption of the additional unit of the commodity. So your marginal utility, now marginal utility is given by total utility of the second unit of rasagulla minus total utility of the first unit of your rasagulla. So if from the second unit of your rasagulla, if you derive your utility is equal to 10, and from the first unit of rasagulla, if you derive your total utility is suppose 8, then your TU2, that is total utility from the second unit of rasagulla minus total utility from the first unit of rasagulla, that is 8, is equal to your 2. So here total utility, marginal utility is 2. So that 2 is your marginal utility, and that is nothing but utility derived from additional consumption. So that is when you are increasing 1 unit of your sweet, first you are consuming first unit, then you have added another unit of your sweet to your consumption basket, then for that additional unit, that is for that additional unit of your consumption of the rasagulla or sweet, how much extra utility or satisfactions you are deriving from the consumption of the additional unit, that is our marginal utility. So that marginal utility derived from the consumption of the additional unit of the commodity. Now in another term, in another way, you can write marginal utility. So marginal utility is equal to total utility from the nth unit minus total utility from the n minus 1. That is, if your n, suppose total utility from the fourth unit of your consumption, suppose when you are successively consuming sweet one after another, and at the fourth level of your fourth unit of your consumption, your total utility that you are deriving, that is called total utility from the fourth unit, and n minus 1, that is the previous one, that is total utility derived from the previous one. So here n minus 1, so that is 4 minus 1, so it will be total utility 4 minus 1, so that 4 minus 1 is nothing but your 3. So total utility from the fourth unit minus total utility from the third unit is your marginal utility. So marginal utility is equal to delta TU due to delta Q. What is that? Marginal utility is equal to change in total utility due to 1 unit change in your consumption of commodity. That is change in total utility due to change in your consumption of your extra unit of commodity. So that is delta TU, that is change in your total utility, and delta Q means change in your quantity. So that is your marginal utility. So this is total utility, that is grand total of your utility derived from the consumption of the bundle of commodities, and marginal utility, that is utility derived from the consumption of an additional unit of commodity. So this is your utility, then total utility, and then marginal utility. Now consumer satisfaction. Now here, to derive your consumer satisfactions, you are having three approaches. One is called Cardinal utility approach. One is called Ordinal utility approach. And another one is your revealed preference. Revealed preference. For your purpose, cardinal utility and ordinal utility is more important. So cardinal utility, that is developed by Alfred Marshall. Ordinal utility developed by Allen and Hicks. And revealed preference theory, that is developed by Samuelson. So these are the three different approaches. One is cardinal utility approach, one is ordinal utility approach, one is revealed preference approach, to derive the consumer satisfactions level, or to derive the consumer equilibrium. So that consumer equilibrium, or it is called satisfaction, consumer's equilibrium. So to derive consumer's equilibrium, that is the point where the consumer is attaining maximum level of satisfactions given his income and prices of the commodity, that is called consumer's equilibrium. To derive consumer's equilibrium, we can have our cardinal utility approach, we can have our ordinal utility approach, or we can have our revealed preference approach. So we shall start today with our cardinal utility approach developed by Alfred Marshall. So this is cardinal utility approach. Now under cardinal utility, what you get according to Alfred Marshall, or the followers of your cardinal utility approach, they opines that your utility can be numerically expressed. So according to cardinal utility approach, our utility level can be expressed through numerical number. So this is the abstract thing. Naturally, utility or satisfactions, that is very much subjective. We cannot measure our level of satisfactions by giving some numerical numbers. Suppose you are consuming apple. Now after the consumption of an apple, if someone asks you what is your level of satisfactions that you have consumed a first unit of apple, then what will be your answer? If you say my level of satisfaction is 10, if you say my level of satisfaction is 20, that means you are following cardinal utility approach. So according to cardinal utility approach, our level of utility or our level of satisfactions that can be measured by numerical number. So if you say the utility can be measured, utility can be measured, utility can be measured numerically, then these numerical numbers, suppose 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on, this is that expresses your level of utility or level of satisfactions that you derive after the consumption of an unit of a consumption. Now this number 1, 2, 3, 4, that is the number that expresses your level of utility. These are called utils. So under cardinal utility approach, what are the utils? These are the numbers that through which you can express your level of satisfactions or your level of utility that you derived out of your consumption. So under cardinal utility approach, the consumer, he is able to express his level of satisfactions that he derived from his consumption, that can be expressed numerically, and these are called utils. Now under cardinal utility approach, there are certain assumptions. What are these? Assumptions under cardinal utility approach. First assumption is that consumer is rational. Rationality. The first assumption under cardinal utility approach is rationality of the consumer. So what is the rationality? That is, consumer is always rational. Consumer always behave like a rational person. What is that rationality? That is, according to cardinal utility approach, the consumer is rational in the sense that the aims of the consumer is to maximize his satisfactions by giving his income. So if you are having your income is suppose rupees 10, now as a rational consumer, you will spend your rupees 10 for the consumption of commodities, suppose X, Y, Z, in such a way that you derive maximum level of satisfaction. That is your rationality. That is, given your income, the consumer will spend that amount of money or the amount of income in such a way that he derive maximum satisfactions. So that is, the consumer is rational. Now the second assumption under cardinal utility approach is your cardinal utility that we have already discussed. Cardinal utility, what does it mean? That is, under cardinal utility approach, the consumer is able to express his level of utility, or he is able to measure his level of utility or satisfactions by assigning numerical numbers, suppose 1, 2, 3, 4, in such a way. So this is the second assumptions under cardinal utility approach, that consumer is able to express his level of utility by assigning numerical numbers, and this number is called utils. Then number 3 assumption, that is constant utility of money. Constant utility of money. What does it mean? Constant utility of money, that implies the utility of money remains the same irrespective of the level of income of the consumer. There is marginal utility of money, that is, marginal utility of money remains same for all the consumers having different levels of income. That means, suppose for rupees 5, the person having income of rupees 10,000, and another person, suppose this is person A, and another person, he is having rupees income of 50,000. Suppose this is person B. Now person A, his level of income is rupees 10,000, and person B, his level of income is rupees 50,000. Now according to cardinal utility approach, that your utility derived from that rupees 5 is remaining same for person A and for person B. That is, your marginal utility remains same irrespective of the level of income of the consumers. So utility for money remains same for all the consumers having different levels of income. That is your constant utility of money. Now fourth assumption is that diminishing marginal utility. Diminishing marginal utility. Now under this assumption, it is opined that there is utility derived from the successive units of consumption will go on diminishing. So diminishing marginal utility means utility derived from the successive units of consumption will go on diminishing. What does it mean? Suppose this is a glass of water, this is the first glass of water, this is the second glass of water, this is the third glass of water. Now the person who is feeling thirsty, if he is consuming that first glass of water and his level of satisfaction is now suppose 10. That is, after consuming the first glass of water, he derived the level of satisfactions for the first glass of water is 10. Now under diminishing marginal utility assumption, when he is consuming the second glass of water, then his marginal utility, that is additional utility from that second unit of glass of water, will go on diminishing. So if it is 10, then it will be less than 10, suppose it is 8, and for the third one, suppose it is 6, or suppose it is 5. So this is the successive units, that is first one, second one, third one. So this is the successive units of consumption. So from the successive units of consumption, your marginal utility is going on diminishing. So this is quite natural thing. When if you take the first unit of suppose an apple, and from that consumption of an apple your level of satisfaction is suppose 10 or 20, and if you instantly if you consume the second unit of an apple, then definitely your level of satisfaction from the second unit of your apple, it will be diminishing. So from the first unit, if it is 20, then from the second unit it will be suppose less than 20, that is it is 15. So this is the diminishing marginal utility. And lastly, according to cardinal utility approach, the utility is additive in nature. Additive utility. Additive utility. So under additive utility, it means that utility derived from various goods and services consumed by a consumer can be added together to obtain the total utility. Now suppose your utility that you derived from the first unit of your consumption, that is 1, then from the second unit your level of utility is suppose U2, from the third unit your level of utility is suppose U3, and if you add all this utility level, then it is your additive utility. So it will be is equal to your total utility. So your under additive utility assumption, your total that is your utility that can be, that is your marginal utility from the first one plus marginal utility from the second one plus marginal utility from the third one plus dot 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 plus marginal utility from the nth unit of commodity is equal to your summation of marginal utilities, where I is equal to 1 to n is equal to total utility. So this is the utility can be added together to derive your total level of satisfaction or total level of utility. So these are the different assumptions. There is rationality of the consumer, cardinal utility assumption, constant utility of money, diminishing marginal utility, additive utility. All these are the assumptions under cardinal utility approach, and based on this cardinal utility approach, another law that have been developed by cardinal utility followers, this is called law of diminishing marginal utility. So in our next class, friends, we shall discuss what is the law of diminishing marginal utility, what are the different assumptions of law of diminishing marginal utility, both in tabular form, in graphical form. We shall explain the law of diminishing marginal utility with its all limitations. So for today, again, if I sum up, then first we have discussed what is consumer behavior, what is consumer satisfactions, what is consumer's equilibrium, and to derive consumer's equilibrium we need the term utility. Now we have defined what is utility, we have defined what is total utility, what is marginal utility, then we have demonstrated there are three different approaches to derive consumer's equilibrium point. One is called cardinal utility approach, one is ordinal utility approach, and another one is reveal preference approach. So today we have started cardinal utility approach. First we have defined what is cardinal utility, then we have discussed what are the different assumptions under cardinal utility approach. So in our next class we shall discuss law of diminishing marginal utility, and in our successive classes we shall discuss consumer's equilibrium under cardinal utility approach. So thank you for today. Good night.